Welcome back, everyone, to Open Line, talking with elder law attorney Tim Takis. Want to hear your stories, your questions about caring for a loved one, whether it be a parent or a spouse, whatever the case may be. We're going to talk about wills, which is always one of my favorite conversations in a moment, but let's first take a call here from Taylor. Hello, Taylor.
Hey, Ben, and good evening to your enlightening guest.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Taylor. What's on your mind? Well,
I'm going to pose the question first, and then I'll put a little background to it. I'm wondering, is there a deadline if a person has been in a nursing home and has been on 10 care the entire time, or whatever it's called, being paid for mainly by that organization.
By Medicaid, yeah.
Medicaid. She passes away. My wife and her sister are the only two heirs, and this lady had a really old home. It's probably 60 years old, and it wasn't that much of a house when she first moved there. This is up in East Tennessee. But anyway, the house is probably worth $30,000 at the most, house and lot.
Yeah. So when can you sell it, right?
Pardon?
When can you sell it?
Yes,
yeah.
They got a bill for $192,000 from the 10 care.
Oh, wow.
After the lady died, but that was...
when did she die?
About 5 or 6 years ago.
Right.
And so I'm wondering, or they're wondering, if they should sell the house, or the rent makes it not even worth fooling with. So they'd like to either dispose of it or...
That's a good question.
Whatever. So I'm just wondering if there is a deadline
Taylor,
that the state has to act within.
All right, well, let's talk about that, Taylor. Thank you. Good question.
He kind of like went right into my wheelhouse on some of those things there. Because, okay, Mom dies 5 years ago. She owns a house. She was on Medicaid at the time of her death. Now, first of all is that there is no Medicaid lien.
Okay. No lien on Medicaid.
Lien. Medicaid does not have a lien on the house. You know, and I hear that over and over again. I even have lawyers that somehow think that if you're on Medicaid, that the state has some sort of automatic lien, so that if you ever sell it, you know, then the state would have to be paid off first. You know, so there's nothing in the courthouse that you can find in the Register of Deeds. There's no statutory lien, which means it doesn't arise just as a matter of law by statute. The only way a lien can arise for Medicaid that was paid out for somebody is if the benefits were improperly paid. So if they committed fraud, maybe they were fraudulent, you know, then Medicaid has a lien.
Right.
So we assume that didn't happen. So she died. Now, the question is that how long does the state have to come in, you know, and how long can they wait to file, you know, to get paid? Well, the answer to that is we don't really know. I mean, we thought at one point it was 1 year, but then there was case law which kind of seemed that it was not 1 year. My understanding that in the last legislative session or last fall, they introduced bills and whatnot to, you know, that they were under consideration, and there was under consideration a bill potentially to limit it to 3 years. So it was like that was the absolute deadline. You know, that 3 years from date of death, you know, the state has to do something.
That seems fair.
I would think so, because they're the payer source, right? They should know when they stop paying because the person died, and also they should know if there's a house. Shouldn't be hard to find, because when they filed the application, they disclosed the house. Well, so I don't know, you know, as far as I know, that legislation did not get passed, and so the problem, what happens, you know, to Taylor and his family is that they decide they want to sell it, you know, and whoever's doing the closing attorney will go, did you get a 10 care release? Is what it's called, which means basically you contact the state Bureau of 10 care and say, and they want a release that says you don't own it, your loved one did not owe us anything.
Right.
Because the lawyers tend to think, the closing attorneys often think that, well, if they don't get a 10 care release and they go ahead and close the sale, then the lawyers will be liable.
Okay.
Because the money passed through their hands.
Right, right.
You know, and there's no case law on that. There's no statute on that.
So you think that question is a bad question? Did you get a 10-care release? You don't need to even go there.
Well, exactly. I mean, in my view is that, you know, there's nothing in the law that requires, the only reason that you need a 10-care release is if you have a probate estate, which means literally it's court supervised. You go down to Judge Kennedy and you open up a probate, and Judge Kennedy is going to say, well, we're not closing this estate until you get a 10-care release. That's the only reason why you need a 10-care release.
Okay.
So that basically the personal representative of the executor can say, you know, all the debts have been paid, you know, and we don't owe 10-care anything. That's what a 10-care release is for. You know, but the real estate industry and the title insurance industry seems to want to use it as a, well, we want to make sure that we can pass good title. And I go, why can't, there's no lien, so why can't you pass good title? But see, I lose that.
Okay.
I lose that battle.
When someone asks that question, then does 10-care go, oh yeah, well, as a matter of fact, we do have a, does that happen?
Right, and they might say, it says, well, we're not going to, you know, we're not going to give you a 10-care release.
And Taylor said he had a bill for $192,000.
Yeah.
What is that?
That basically means is that apparently that mom, you know, had been in the nursing home for so long that she accrued a debt to 10-care of $190,000.
Wow.
So she may have been in the nursing home for 5 or 7 years, or who knows how much they paid out for her.
Right.
Yeah, and so now that's just sitting there on the books, and they probably got a letter from 10-care after she died that says, oh, by the way, here's what you owe, you know, and 10-care just sits on it.
And so what does that mean for Taylor?
It means that at some point, if Taylor just, you know, the way I look at it is that 10-care goes, well, we're going to be here a lot, probably longer than you are.
Yeah.
So we can wait, and that property is going to be here longer than you are.
So when that property sells,
it's very likely that a closing attorney is going to go, do you have a 10-care release?
Yeah.
Because we can't close this property without getting it. It's like, Mom died 10 years ago. What do you mean? It's like, well, we don't care. Our title insurance underwriter says we're not going to insure the title unless you get a 10-care release. You know, and then you contact 10-care, and they say, well, we're not going to give you a release until you pay us $190,000 or whatever comes out of this house, because it's going to be less.
Yeah.
So what is their incentive to sell, to do anything with that house?
Right.
See, that's my point is that, you know, they're sitting on a $30,000 house, and why would you even bother want to maintain it, to keep it up? I mean, you know, we're not telling people to like put a match to it, because that's arson.
Sure.
You know, but at the same time, you almost want to go to 10-care and say, take your house.
Sure.
You know, and then you pay the taxes and you pay the insurance and you keep the property up.
Wow. And now, how often does that happen? Is this common?
Well, I don't know about that scenario where you go to 10-care and say, you know, here, you know, take it and you know what to do with it. You know, because we're not maintaining the house for you. Now, maybe you have a, maybe it's a phone call to Bureau of 10-Care Counsel and say, look, can you give us a break here somehow?
Yeah, the house is only worth $30,000. This $192,000.
We put money into the house, and they might say, just take it, but they don't have to.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, we have to take a break. Want to talk about wills? Okay, we didn't talk about now.
Right.
Next
break.
Segment. Yes. Next segment, we'll talk about wills.
Right.
Let's take a break. Be back right after this.